Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. As noted, this is being recorded and will be archived online. I'm Dr. Craig Ingstrom. I am the Chief Coach at Communication at Work, LLC, Associate Professor of Business Communication at Southern Illinois University, Carbondale, and a current co-chair of National Communication Association's Talent Development Division. The division has been hosting these training webinars since 2018, and this is the 6th webinar in the series. I would like to welcome everyone to today's webinar, Getting Started in Your TD Career, Insights from APTD Practitioners. APTD stands for Associate Professional of Talent Development and is a certification administered by the Association for Talent Development. The certificate is for talent development professionals, and the competencies included in the APTD are instructional design, training delivery, and learning technologies. Evaluating learning impact is a foundational competency as well as the global mindset. Today, we have 6 APTs on the webinar, including myself, who are eager to share with you in a Q&A session what you might be thinking about as you begin your career in talent development, or consider maybe creating sort of a side hustle if you already have a full-time position. I will briefly introduce our speakers. In-depth bios can be found online at natcomtd.org/APTDs. And that'll be available to you at the end of the webinar. We have with us Charmaine Perry, who has a Master's of Public Administration, and she is responsible for designing curriculum, project management, and providing strategic consultation to the departmental leaders for learning needs at Fulton County Government. Maggie Romanovich leads learning and development efforts for national sales at Constellation Brands, the company behind the beer, wine, and spirits brands that you love and have celebrated for over 70 years. Lisa Kjell Piasecki is an associate professor of management at Tiffin University in Ohio and the current president of the Greater Toledo Area chapter of the ATD. John Knoll specializes in instructional design and training delivery for both e-learning and classroom environments. In his current role, John oversees talent development efforts for a leading manufacturer of rigid containers and cling film for the food service industry. And Kevin Rfp joins us from Charlotte, North Carolina, where he is a learning and development manager for Firebird's Wood-Fired Grill, a position in which he implements training systems, programs, and content for all levels of the organization. He leads the new restaurant opening program, ensuring the success of managers in training, and he also authors e-learning courses. I'm excited to hear from these experts. I'm very proud of the work that NCA Training and Development does, and you can learn more about the division, our upcoming conferences, and webinars. You can also see an archived recording of this webinar at natcom-td.org. Before we get too far into this webinar, I would like to initiate a poll just to kind of see who we have in here and what you all might be interested in. So I'm going to launch the poll. If you are able to see the poll, go ahead and respond. At this time, if you are calling in, I understand you won't be able to necessarily see this. So the question is, what aspects of talent development roles would you like to learn more about today? All right, I'll go ahead and give about 10 more seconds here. So again, the question was, what aspects of talent development roles would you like to learn more about today? And there's a series of questions you can respond to. A couple of them. I'm going to go ahead and end polling at this time. So what the question asked was, do you want to know about assessment, employee engagement, training and delivery, instructional design, e-content, microlearning, project management, coaching, facilitation, or other? And if you're an other, there is one person that indicated that. You can obviously type at any time questions you have in the group chat. Also, feel free to unmute your mic at any time to ask questions of our folks, and they will respond as appropriate. Not everyone will always chime in, but that's sort of the format we have today. We wanted it to be very sort of open learning and just have a conversation. So it does seem to me a lot of folks are interested in training itself, for how to be a trainer, how to do delivery. And so I'm sure, just based on the folks in this room, there's a lot of expertise, not only from those that are APTDs, but those who are also just training and through the National Communication Association. So feel free to also chime in and participate in the conversation. You will have to unmute your mic, and I ask that you mute it back at any time. Okay, so with that said, let's go ahead and get started. Again, we have on the line here a variety of folks with a variety of skills and expertise. I do have a question just to get us started, and again, type questions at any time in the chat box or just chime in. I think the question is, and again, feel free to respond if you feel up to it, for those of you that are presenters, why did you decide to get the APTD?
Craig,
this is Maggie. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Maggie. I should have called someone out first, so I'll do that in the future.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and go with Maggie. Yeah.
That's fine. So I went for my APTD because I was new to the learning and development industry. I had fallen into it like so many of us do, and I wanted to get some validation in the things that I had some instincts on, some validation on the way that I'd been preparing myself for the role, but also to build the credibility as I moved into different learning and development roles. I wanted to make sure that people trusted my skill set as I moved throughout different, I've had 3 different learning and development roles in the past 5 years here at Constellation, to make sure that people could trust that what I was recommending or implementing was based in industry standards. So being able to have those pieces work for me, and so the validation as well as the credibility were really important to me, and that's why I got my APTD.
Sounds great. I see Lisa has raised her hand.
Hi, yes, this is Lisa. I have been involved with ATD probably for about 15 years, and one of the reasons I decided to get the certification was because I teach training and development, and I've seen in the past few years that there has been an increase in certifications just across various industries. So I thought, as a professor, it was important that I had some type of background in a certification that was offered by a group that I advocate my students belong. And it really helped me in revisiting some of the topics that I kind of have not necessarily got away from, but you kind of forget about the right way to do things. And so the whole process and rigor behind the certification was very good and very helpful for me.
If I could just ask a quick follow-up question. I know there's probably several folks that have a doctorate or teach at universities, those from the NCA. Do you find that this was valuable in any way to your colleagues within higher education?
So this is Lisa again, and I found that even the materials that ATD offered are helpful when I'm serving on maybe some committees and we're talking about learning objectives and matching our learning objectives to an assessment or evaluation. Just going through that whole process again in the materials from ATD is very helpful, and I've been able to share that with some of my other colleagues.
Great, thank you. Now, Kevin, I do have a question for you. Since we're on the topic of APTD, I know you have another certification. If you'd like to, 1, speak about that, and 2, how APTD might help those that are in maybe the services industry.
Sure, absolutely. Well, the other certification I have is the CHT, or Certified Hospitality Trainer, from the American Hotel and Lodging Educational Institute. I obtained my APTD before my CHT. And as you can tell by the name, it is pretty specialized for the hospitality and services industry. However, that one did do a lot of focusing on training delivery. The APTD had of course your big AOEs, or areas of expertise. But the CHT did focus a lot on training delivery and not so much on the other aspects of it. So anybody who is kind of in that hospitality and services industry, and Craig, I think a lot of people also have some confusion. You know, the hospitality industry isn't just restaurants. It's restaurants, it's hotels, it's amusement parks, theme parks. You know, any company that provides any type of service like that could fall under the hospitality umbrella. And the AHLEI certification was very, very beneficial to that. But again, I obtained that one after the APTD, and I found that the APTD really helped me out in getting that. It laid a lot of the foundational groundwork for what I learned in the CHT. And the CHT also, to Maggie's point, when you're suggesting and recommending different strategies and systems for brand leaders, it helps to have those credentials to back up essentially that you know what you're talking about. And obtaining that CHT just allowed me to further validate that knowledge in our particular industry.
Sounds great. I meet a lot of folks that are interested in like sports administration, and I think some of them go on to work at venues. So would the CHT also fit for like operations for a sports venue?
It could, yes. There are going to be some differences there, but sports venues do include a lot of food and beverage service, a lot of guest service. So absolutely, I would 100% recommend that for somebody in that venue as well, or that arena as well.
All right, great, thank you. So I'm going to take a pause here and just let the audience, anybody in the audience that would like to ask questions. I do have another question here that's related. Can you repeat what the CHT is? Kevin?
Sure. It's a certified hospitality trainer from the American Hotel and Lodging Educational Institute.
All right. I don't think I spelled hospitality correct, but I typed it in there for folks. Oh, you actually typed it, Kevin. Missed that. All right. So go ahead and feel free to ask questions in the chat box or unmute your mic and ask a question. I will take a pause here to let someone chime in. So I have a question. Do you need to be a member of ATD to seek certification? And I believe the answer to that is no, but I'll let other colleagues speak.
I was not a member of ATD when I obtained my APTD certification.
Gotcha. I think you might have to be to recertify. I don't know if that's correct. I remember having this conversation with John in Washington, D.C. I don't know if John can chime in on that.
Craig, my understanding is that you do not have to be a member to obtain the certification or to recertify. You do get points for national and local membership for recertification points. And you also get a discount off of the fees, I believe, like all the other ATD programs that usually compensates for the cost of an annual membership. But there's more information, of course, on the ATD website for that.
Gotcha. And are any of your employers sponsoring these certifications?
Mine did.
Yeah, this is Maggie.
Okay. Kevin's saying his did. I think I heard Maggie saying
Maggie, yeah. I actually made a case for why I should get the APTD and was able to negotiate that into my development for the year.
Gotcha.
This is John. My situation was a little different. My employer at the time would not pay for the certification, but they did pay for the prep material. So we kind of split the cost that way.
And this is Lisa. Mine did not.
And mine did not either. So, okay, that's a good question. Someone did ask for a link to that. I'm going to post it in the chat. So if you want to check it out while we're chatting, feel free to do that. So I don't know if we have anybody in this room. And again, if you're not a speaker, you can go ahead and chime in if you have the answer to these questions. I did get a question from someone that was not able to attend the webinar, but was interested in, what kind of training jobs are available in the tech industry. And I think more than just like sort of the skills-based training, I think is what he's interested in. He's not interested in, for example, teaching someone how to use a particular tool. So I didn't have a good answer for that, but if someone does, feel free to write that in the comments or go ahead and unmute and share. So I actually have a question. I'm going to go ahead and continue the conversation here with what are some of the trends that you all are seeing in industry that we should be on the lookout for? Because I'm very far removed being in higher education, so I'm very interested in that from my students' point of view. And I'll go and let Kevin talk first on this one.
Sure. The two that we're seeing really pop up over and over again right now, Craig, are adaptive and experiential learning, and then augmented reality and virtual reality. Those are the two trends that I think are on the rise. Just, I mean, from in our industry, being able to utilize virtual and augmented reality is a massive time and cost saver. You know, you can build these environments where it looks just like a restaurant setting. You can build an environment that looks just like a kitchen with different food safety violations, and the learner never has to leave their seat or never has to leave a confined space. So cuts down on some costs, you know, especially for our managers in training, cuts down on lodging costs and having to send them, you know, all over the place. It gives them an exact, minus the actual tactile feedback, but an exact replica of a restaurant. And so those are the two trends that we're seeing right now, Craig. And I apologize if I maybe missed the question. There's a question in the chat box that looks like I might have answered the wrong question.
Okay, no worries. And I'm going to unmute, or I'm going to lower Lisa's hand. She's going to say something here.
Hi, Kevin, this is a question for you because I just finished up a semester of teaching, training, and development. And one of the exercises I have my students do is look at videos that are out there on Second Life, and to explore the potential of using virtual reality in training. So you mentioned that this is really one of the trends you're seeing. I'm interested in how, like for your organization, do you hire someone to develop this training yourself, or are you working with a vendor, someone who's, you know, well known in the field in designing the virtual training?
We're actually working with vendors, Lisa. Admittedly, I don't have very much experience in designing that particular set of training. So we are working with a few vendors, and I'd be happy to send over who we have and all of that if you'd like. But as of right now, we're basically just we're still in the very early stages of it here at Firebirds. But we're doing a lot of RFPs and figuring out what the capabilities of these different vendors are and what they can do, whether it's a full on, you know, we tell them what we want and they give us a production, or, you know, we help build them out. But I'd be happy to send you some of the vendors that you know, we're kind of looking into and all of that. So I'll make a note to myself to do that.
Okay, thank you.
And I just want to say, for those who might not know what an RFP is, it's a request for proposal. So for those that might be joining and very early in their career, just reemphasizing how important it might be to think about how to make good, you know, sort of how to write well and how to make good arguments and so forth. Little plug for my students, at least. Can you speak a little bit more, anybody that's out there, then how you might use virtual reality or augmented reality, and give us like an actual scenario? So in my mind, I'm thinking of, you know, that I have someone come up to me in this virtual reality environment and ask me a question, and then I respond, and then they respond something back, sort of like a customer service training is, you know, I just need more of a picture. And I've seen a couple questions in the chat about this as well.
I can speak to this a little bit. This is Maggie. I know one of my colleagues who works with our vineyards out in California. They are using a tool, and I wish I could remember what the name of it is, but it is something that sits, it's an augmented reality, so it sits on top of the machinery in a virtual way. And so you can practice using the actual machine you have because it uses the integrated camera. and you can go through the motions in a simulation without, wrecking the actual machine, because they're, of course, very expensive. But it allows you to test and learn that way and make errors in a risk-free way. So that's one of the ways that we've been using augmented reality on our wine production side.
Very cool.
Craig,
Yes, is this?
this is Rose.
Okay, great.
Hi, everyone. I had another example too. There's a couple faculty members at my school who were creating VR simulations for first responders in rural areas because they don't have the means to create a large test area where first responders can practice utilizing their physical skills. So they were working with virtual reality to help firefighters figure out how to manage a situation when they arrive on the scene, I guess.
Okay, that makes sense. Sort of like a CPR scenario. So, okay, very nice. I do want to take a moment to welcome to the call Sherry. Charmaine, who was joining us late, but she's also one of the APTDs that I introduced at the beginning, and she'll feel free to join in and answer questions at any time. Do you want to say hi to anything to us, Charmaine? Unless we lost her. I guess I am not hearing her, so maybe she got dropped again. So anyway, continuing on, feel free to ask questions.
Craig, this is John. I had a different use for AR that I just wanted to share, kind of building on what some of the others had mentioned. We've worked with a local university and they're in the early stages, but we've had a successful prototype set up using AR for employee performance support for our machine operators on the manufacturing floor. If they have an issue, they can contact someone in support, maybe at another facility. They can put on their AR glasses, and the person providing them support can not only see what they're seeing, but can interact with their environment, can put signs or arrows or put information in their field of view for them to see as they're trying to correct an issue on a machine, and can also experience their environment remotely. So it's almost as if having someone stand there with you.
That sounds great. I guess this leads me to a follow-up question for all of you. Do you feel that, maybe artificial reality or VR, and I'm sure with machine learning, will maybe displace the trainer at some point in the future?
Hi guys, this is Charmaine. Can I jump in and answer that one?
Absolutely.
I apologize for being late on the call. I'm running through the airport. I don't think it's
brilliant.
going to replace the trainer. I think it's going to be a great partnership. We're seeing that at hotels. They're using virtual reality to carry items up to different guests, and I think it's going to be a great way for us to work together. But if we allow it to replace trainers, it absolutely will. But if we see it as a partnership, I think it could be a very powerful one.
Kevin raised his hand. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, and one of the things that we struggle with here in our industry, and I think is kind of becoming a trend across all guest-facing or customer-facing industries, is the need. What we're finding is we're having to train people just good old-fashioned people skills. A lot of communication is handled electronically these days, text messaging, email. Even at our host stands, we use an open table system on an iPad. So that's where I don't think that AR and VR does a really good job. I listened to the examples that John gave and that Maggie gave, and they're very, very similar to what we're using AR and VR for. But I don't hear a lot of the people-to-people interaction piece on that, and that's where I think that humans will continue to, or trainers essentially will continue to be a big necessity in the future. And especially in our industry, is we can't forego those people skills. Actually, what we're finding is it has to be top of mind. It has to be right up front in all of the training, teaching people how to interact with people face to face, teaching them how to smile, teaching them how to make eye contact, shake their hand and say thank you. Things like that, a lot of us on this call have just been kind of ingrained. We're finding that with younger generations, we're actually having to teach that right up front. So that's where I think that the separation of man and machine will kind of stay until machines are able to do that, or until we find a way that virtual reality or augmented reality can tackle that better than human-to-human interaction.
Go ahead, Lisa.
I just wanted to kind of mention something that along the lines of what Kevin was talking about. I do a workshop on emotional intelligence for my undergrad students, and ATD actually has the workshops, the material for people who are interested in doing that. So that's kind of a plug for ATD, but emotional intelligence is really important. It is something that we try to emphasize in our curriculum for our students because it's a skill that they need to develop, and it is a skill that can be taught. So a little bit off topic from the augmented reality.
Well, I think it's right on topic because that's actually what the MIT lab indicates. You know, they're at the forefront of thinking about technology and human interaction, and they consistently say sort of one of the top skills that kind of will be hard for a robot, so to speak, to replace would be interpersonal communication. They'll say, for example, maybe AI will be very good at maybe discerning emotions of people, but then changing those emotions or how to engage with people appropriately will really fall to humans, teaching humans how to do that. I mean, clearly you can have maybe videos and those kind of interactions, but I find that live training is very helpful in that regard, which is why we utilize the flipped classroom over here for that. Is that how you have your class set up? Is it a hybrid class, Lisa?
I do a combination. The training and development class that I just finished teaching was entirely online. And I see I have someone's on the call that went through that. That course also used to be offered as a hybrid, but right now we're just doing it online.
Gotcha. Okay, Maggie's raised her hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to that flipped classroom because it's something that I think is a way for us to really utilize technology to our advantage while maximizing our face-to-face time. So I actually implemented it this year where I worked with, we had a need for software development, skill development. And historically we'd spend quite a bit of money to bring people out of the market for a whole week, and they would learn this in person. And what I found when I was doing an evaluation of it is that 10% of the people actually used it, and the rest of them were either lost in the first 10 minutes, didn't feel like they could ask questions, or, which I'm sure that you've all experienced if you've ever done a training in person. You've got a handful of people who are multitasking at the back, which we all know is just a nice way of saying, doing half the work and screwing it up about 50%. Multitasking is a misnomer. So what we did was a flipped classroom where we used an open source learning platform. And we found a really productive, it was a 7.5-hour course that we allowed our learners 7 hours to complete. And so we expected about an hour a week. They were able to pace themselves, go back and review the content. They could work directly with the creators of the content to ask questions. They got to use examples as part of the classwork and in real time. And then we all came together for a day where you're reducing your time out of market. You're instead of doing learning in person, you're actually workshopping the skills that you're using. And the satisfaction rate coming out of that was overwhelmingly high. And people felt like they were more empowered to use that back on the job. So in my estimation, being able to use technology such as e-learning or virtual reality or augmented reality to flex your skills and then come together to figure out how they actually apply in the real world is a way for us to utilize that technology while keeping our human connection, which, as you've all agreed, is really important, as we move forward in business. So, I'm a strong believer in the flipped classroom, and I'm planning on implementing that for a lot of our other technology needs.
That's great. Thank you for that. And if you don't mind, maybe tossing in the name of that open source platform that you get your content from into the chat, that'd be awesome for all of us to have.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I do want to give a shout out from Kyle to Lisa. I guess he's the individual that was in your class and said that you did the Second Life, and as an operations manager in a large auto manufacturer, has been heavily involved in training development first teams and saw a great value in that method. So kudos to you, Lisa. And also thanks, Kyle, for sharing.
Thank you.
Okay, there is a question here in the chat box. Have you seen an actual difference in training outcomes or assessments when it comes to using VR? Okay, I have Kevin with his hand raised.
Craig, not firsthand. We're still very, very, very early on in the process. However, I don't have any measurable impact. But I can tell you that what the feedback that we've received, just the anecdotal feedback, and just kind of participating in some of these things in conferences and getting demos on these items is that it will have a difference. It will make a difference in the training outcome and assessment. We don't have any doubt about that. Unfortunately, I just can't provide any type of tangible benefits currently. But if you ask the same question in maybe 2 or 3 months, I might be able to have something for you. But I did want to back up for a second, if it's okay, Craig, and just back to the flipped classroom thing. And I just wanted to make sure that we had defined what the flipped classroom was. I know that the big portion of people were interested in training delivery, and it seems like a lot of the presenters here, including us at Firebirds, are using the flipped classroom with a lot of great results. And so for anybody that's new here, I wanted to make sure that we defined that for them.
So do you have a definition?
Well, I mean, I can tell you how we do it, and really basically the way we look at it is, instead of bringing everybody in for a specified number of days, days and days and days long meeting, we give them a lot of the educational information up front. We utilize this in our new restaurant opening program to where all of the hourly team members must take all of their e-learning courses before they even get into the building. So instead of actually teaching them recipes and menu items and kind of the I don't want to say minutia, but those little details, they kind of teach themselves through self-paced learning. Again, to Maggie's point, we give them a specified number of hours that they can take these courses in prior to training week. They come in with that fundamental knowledge, and it really allows us to dig deep into some secondary things like the emotional intelligence or the actual styles of service, and it just gets a lot of that presentation piece out of the way, and allows them to come in with maybe 75% of the knowledge as opposed to 0% of the knowledge. So then we're just taking it from 75 to 100, and it allows us a lot of time savings. And again, it allows for more higher level discussion and thinking than if we had to teach them every single thing from the time they stepped in the door till the time they left.
Great, thank you. That's a great example for defining it. I see Maggie has her hand raised. I'm going to wait on her for a second and see if Charmaine is on the line, because I'd be interested in how government is using this. It seems like a pretty cost-effective way to get some training done in government. So we'll see if she's still on the call.
I am, and for flipped classroom, I use this a lot with my managers and supervisors. I may give them case studies in advance or a good portion of the material and ask them to come in with ideas on how to further the knowledge or to connect it to their division or their department, that they can bring case studies in as well. And it's actually been very impactful. It doesn't feel as stuffy, if you will. And I once taught in the school system, and it works really well to give them the opportunity to look through the information prior to coming and experiencing it.
All right, great. Thank you. All right. So Maggie, did you still want to comment?
Yeah, I was actually going to build off of what Charmaine and Kevin had said. Kevin said something about getting everybody about 75% of the way there. And I think it's really important to also talk about the way that it allows people to get to the 75%. There are people who might take a little bit longer, and there might be people who rush through it, and it really gives people a sense of security in the session to have that experience going in there. And to build on what Charmaine mentioned, she said she'd use that in the classroom. I actually I understood it in concept, but I really saw it in practice. My husband's an 8th grade math teacher, and he uses the flipped classroom to really help children, you know, just like it would work for adults, but you know, it helps the children really get a hold of the concept, and they can watch the video at their own pace in the safety of their own environment, and then come together prepared with questions and to be able to execute it on their own, instead of, you know, teaching everybody everything all at once and then being sent off into the world to try to execute it on their own. It's really, it empowers the user better and reinforces a lot of the neuroscience behind learning, you know, having it in chunks, being able to digest it, being able to reset, a little bit of repetition, but being able to pace yourself. And that it made me a believer to see it in action.
Yeah, so that actually goes to one of the common themes that came up in the poll, which is, you know, delivery. And I think that you have to consider how best to deliver for live and then also for online. And of course, one of the best practices is to allow people to move at their own pace, to revisit, or even move ahead if possible. So, you know, there might be a webinar just on that topic. I see Lisa has her hand up, so I'll go ahead and let her comment.
Thanks, Craig. I just want another comment on the flipped classroom from the higher education perspective. So I've been using those types of techniques for, I don't know, maybe 8 years or so. And the flipped classroom technique has worked really well for non-traditional students. Some of the challenges, though, that we see using it at the undergrad level, so for your traditional college age student, is that there is a reluctance from students to do a lot of the work outside of class. So you have some students who will come to class and have prepared, and then you have another, you know, maybe half the class who hasn't done it. So today's college student who's in Gen Z isn't quite there yet. They like it if they can do a lot of things on their own, but we're still struggling with getting everyone kind of on the same page. So it's not totally using the flipped classroom. There's elements of it. It's just still a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, part of it is the idea of autonomy, right? So working autonomously is not always something that someone has developed yet, especially at a younger age.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I was just curious, do you have it set up at your university where, you know, maybe like 1.5% of or 1.5 hours is online and then 1.5 hours in like a lab scenario? That's the way we've designed it here. Or do you just have a lot of online, well, not a lot, but some online content, but still continue with the 3-hour per week meetings?
Yeah, that's pretty much what we do. We're pretty traditional still, in that we have, you know, a variety of professors who will experiment each semester maybe with the, delivering it in different curriculum, but we don't have any set guidelines, it sounds like, with what you do at your university.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. All right, anybody that's you know, hanging out in the audience that wants to unmute your mic and ask questions, feel free to do so. Or to go ahead and type them in the group chat.
Craig, I actually have a question for Lisa, if there's no other questions at the time.
Absolutely, go ahead.
Lisa, do you find that it interests me that you know, you have such kind of a wide range of people that, or students, you know, that do their work and get it completed, and some don't. And so I'm going back to, you know, orientation to learning, and I'm wondering, is it because this is something, I mean, I guess for them, you know, going to your class, they've paid their money, you know, it's their responsibility, it's something they want to do, and something they have to do at that time. But are you finding the people that are not completing it are ones that are generally disengaged in class, and kind of display an overall sense of, I don't know, maybe aloofness, or is it more so just the generational aspect of it, and the fact that it's a college or a graduate course, instead of a job where these types of things would actually be required for them to succeed in their role?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's a variety of things. We are still seeing some differences in maybe the access to technology that they're coming from. So when I say that, I mean from maybe a school district that they're coming from that didn't have a lot of resources for technology. There are still Gen Z students who aren't very comfortable with using some of the technology out there, like navigating through an LMS, you know, using maybe a smart device to access materials. So there's still a little bit of that, some of the digital divide. I think also, sure, yeah, it's not a job, it's for a grade. And so there's some of the maybe reluctance to put a lot of effort in if it's just for a grade and not a job. So it's really a variety of things. I think as some of the electronic sources have improved in the past years, maybe today's K through 12 student in 5 years will see maybe a more responsiveness in using the things outside of class. I don't know.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, I think one thing that is now getting taken for granted is the idea of digital literacy. I think the idea is that, well, you know, these younger folks have grown up in sort of surrounded by technology, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they know how to use, you know, technology well. And just thinking from a training and development perspective, I read an article once about how when Netflix really came on the scene, particularly with streaming service, they had to train their customer service folks, and because people didn't have language to even talk about like how they navigate that, and they would get questions like, how do I navigate the Quayway, right, which is actually a queue, but a lot of people had never seen that word written. So I think we take for granted that digital natives might not really know how to exploit the digital technology or feel comfortable sort of poking around with it in a way because maybe they're afraid they'll break it or something. So that's just something to keep in mind. I do want to, you know, sort of pivot a little bit and get to some thoughts on the industry folks in here about the use of like badges and so forth, because we're talking about grades a little bit. So what are some of the incentives for completion? And I'm just curious, like, how are you all using badging in industry, if at all? How do you find it? Is it useful to sort of give people those little micro credentials along the route and so forth? Well, maybe a question to ask is, does anybody use mic or the badges at all? Maggie's got her hand up.
Hi there. So we are actually not doing that a whole lot, mostly because there's so many industry, and you know, Kevin might be able to relate to this too. There's a lot of industry credentials that we can use. So the idea of setting up, you know, the badging system, like, it really needs a lot of traction, you know, and company buy-in to make those things work. So, you know, we've toyed with things like leaderboards in our learning management system. Part of our division has some learning KPIs that are associated with it, but the juice isn't worth the squeeze, like they say at this point. You know, we really focus on industry certifications as that, you know, kind of prestige piece.
Go ahead, Kevin. Oh, yeah, I think I hear Charmaine too. So Charmaine, I'll go with you after Kevin.
I'll echo exactly what Maggie said. What we're finding is learners aren't spending enough time in the place where they can see those badges. So they're not spending enough time perusing the LMS to actually see those. We had toyed with the idea, and it's something that I think has a place somewhere. Of trying to turn it into a little bit of a competition, and I know that's kind of one of the underlying themes of badging is being able to show off your work and that. But to Maggie's point, we have so many certifications and recognition opportunities in our industry that that badging for us, just even in the LMS itself, like when you complete a course or you complete, you know, say we have a course called Grapes to Glass for wine. And if you complete that whole course, then you get a certified Grapes to Glass badge on your LMS. Well, that's great, but there's not a lot of people that have visibility into that except for the actual learner. So We haven't, excuse me, we haven't really done much with digital badging. We also send a pin, a physical pin that they can wear. That seems to create a little bit more impact with team members and with guests too. It's kind of a conversation piece. So badging right now is still kind of, digital badging for us is up in the air. And it's not something that we're really looking into that hard, just because they don't spend a lot of time in those auxiliary rooms, if you will, in the LMS.
Gotcha. Thank you. Charmaine, I think I heard the airport, so I was wondering if you were trying to answer this question. Okay, maybe not. Maybe we've lost her as well. So I do want to give an opportunity for, John maybe to also say some things. I feel like some of our voices are dominating. So John, did you want to contribute any thoughts on any topics that we've sort of covered so far?
If I can unmute my phone, yeah. Just to piggyback on the conversation about badging, in my attempts to use it, both here and with a previous organization, I've experienced a lot of the same as what Kevin was sharing, and that it's really only visible to that one learner or the learner and their manager, and so we don't get a lot of traction. I've had more success with other recognition tools, such as using automatic notifications at LMS to remind supervisors to follow up with their employees and congratulate them on their achievements directly, rather than digital badging. I just haven't found a good way to get traction with it and to get it to take on with an organization.
I could echo the same thing everyone is saying here for government. We're seeing a lot of interest among employees, but the buy-in is just not there. And so if we're in a traditional route, I'm looking to see how can we leverage digital badging, but still keep the interest and allow the exposure to be there for all people to be able to really benefit from that.
Well, it sort of circles back to the idea of getting even the APTD. I guess if employees could somehow carry these badges with them across platforms, and I guess that's the whole idea of like Accreditly, for example, or be able to share them on LinkedIn, and industry would recognize them, maybe there would be a little bit more traction there. So we are getting close to the sort of end of the hour together. So I want to just double check to make sure if anybody had a question that they wanted to ask that we haven't covered yet, please put that in the chat. Also, feel free to unmute and share. I think we'll spend about a few more minutes here just answering questions if you have any. Okay, we have a question here in the chat. Since badging does not create the buy-in for learning, what are some tips to creating this buy-in from employees and or students? Okay, Kevin, go ahead.
What's in it for me? That's the kind of circling theme that I'll come back to when it talks about creating buy-in is just letting people know exactly up front what's in it for them, how the training is going to directly benefit them in their learning journey or on the job. We practice a lot of just-in-time learning here and giving you exactly what you need and nothing else. I know in this day and age with notifications and pings and pops and whirs, on every other machine that you have, it's very, very hard to hold somebody's attention. So learners, one of the ways that we found that learners lose buy-in very quickly is if they start to think that what they're learning is not going to directly affect what they're doing on the job. From an employee standpoint, I can't really speak to a student standpoint, but from an employee standpoint, giving them the what's in it for me directly up front is a great way to create the buy-in. It's also a great way to separate who really has a desire to learn the content versus who may just be doing it to check a box. But then just some good old-fashioned recognition. And if you have a compliance course that needs to be taken amongst a group of team members, then recognizing the first 5 people who get those things taken with maybe a small gift card or even just some a public recognition in a little team huddle or something like that, also kind of incites a little bit of that competitive nature and like, oh my gosh, like Craig got recognized for doing this. Maybe I need to do it now too. But the main point is, from what we found and how we have success, especially when we're facing buy-in from our field leaders, is again, being very direct and upfront with how the training is going to benefit them. In our industry, a lot of it relates back to guest satisfaction and sales. So letting them know how the training is going to either get their guests to be more satisfied or put more dollars in their pocket are ways that we create that buy-in.
Thank you. John wanted to say something.
Well, I think Kevin actually beat me to all of it. So great answer, Kevin. Just on that same point, I was going to share that similarly, it's what's in it for me. So here, what we're trying to do is to map out, career paths and set up qualifications and training related to different roles for people within the organization. So as our new employees are coming in and saying, I'm a packer today, but I want to be an operator, or I want to go to materials, or I want to be on the setup crew. What training do I need to get there? And so that we have that visible to them and we can drive that. And then that public recognition and the follow-up from the manager, the supervisor, I have found to be a huge motivator for people. Just letting them know that what they're doing is being seen and being recognized, and it's helping them get to where they want to be. And then, again, everything Kevin said, because he beat me to it. So, great job, Kevin.
Nice. Okay, we are down to the last 5 minutes here. So we had some great chat. We had a lot of excellent conversation. I appreciate everyone that unmuted your phone and asked questions or participated in the discussion, and those who shared in the chat to sort of drive us forward. Just for the sake of time, I do want to sort of bring this webinar to a close. With that said, I want to thank the presenters for their time and expertise. As I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, you can see a recording of this at natcom-td.org. It will be posted a little bit later today. You can learn more about the division, our upcoming conferences and webinars, and join our mailing list at the links on this page, which are available as well at the website. If you would like to get in contact with any of the speakers that were here today with us sharing their excellent insights, also touch base with them. If you saw in the chat, some of them were mentioning things that they could comment further upon, studies that they're doing and so forth. Feel free to reach out to them. All of their contact information, or at least their LinkedIn contact information, is on natcom-td.org/APTDS. And if anybody would like to learn more about the association or the associate professional and talent development offered by ATD, just let any of us know, and we'll put you in conversation with some folks over at the national office who I think would be happy to answer any questions. With that said, does anybody have any departing words? If so, I will start at the top of the list of our speakers. So go ahead if you would like to, Charmaine, and say one last final word to everyone.
So if I could add one last thing, I would say reach out to everyone. You never know who someone else knows and what opportunities can come about for you. Don't be scared of the exam. Embrace it. Embrace what we're doing in this field because it's growing exponentially. We talked about VR and AR and all of these things that are growing, and learning is one of those tools that is impacting every industry. And so the more that we know and the more exposure that we have and connect, is the greater our impact is across the board.
Thank you very much. And thanks for joining us while you're in transit. Maggie, any final word?
Yeah, I'm going to give you some advice that my husband gave me when I was thinking about starting a career in learning and development, and that is that the time is passing anyway, so make the most of it. I found that the Association for Talent Development and the APTD especially, Chicago chapter, if anybody on the phone is in Chicago, we have a great program called WLPI. But go learn more. Just keep learning, and you'll get pointed in the right direction, but you'll never regret it if you do, but you might regret it if you don't.
Thank you. Lisa, final word.
Well, I think that one of the values of getting the certification is just that it connects you with individuals who are in the field and industry. Also helps keep you involved with the trends that are going on. Just some of the things that were already mentioned today. So if anyone's thinking about it, let me know if you're in the area and I can share more with you, but it really was valuable for me.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. John.
Yeah, as everyone else said, the APTD certification has been extremely valuable, but for anyone that's just starting out or even just considering a career in learning and development, certification may seem like a bit much to bite off to start. I would recommend, checking out one of the other courses offered by ATD. The training certificate course is where I started. It was a fantastic course. It confirmed a lot I was doing and gave me a lot to work on. The instructional design course is another great one, and you can do those either in person or online. So definitely check those out. They're a great resource.
Thanks, John. And Kevin, bring us home.
Thanks, Craig. I just want to reiterate the points that a couple other people made here, and that's, use us and use other people as your resources. I know everybody, all the presenters on this call are always happy to share their thoughts and always happy to connect with other people, especially ones in the industry or just getting started out in learning and development. One of the things that I value the most about the APTD certification, on top of the verification and validation it gave me for what I was doing, was, as Lisa said, the connections that we've made. And, this group of APTDs, we've been working together since June, and, our relationships continue to grow. And I'm just so grateful to that. I know I can reach out to any one of these folks on the phone and ask a question. And even if it's something silly like, hey, how are you doing this in your industry? Or, hey, how are you doing this at your company? Everybody in this industry, for the most part, from what I found, is always happy to share information, always happy to connect with other people. So I'm a huge believer that people are our most valuable resource, and everybody on this call should feel free to reach out to myself and all of the other presenters and use us as resources any way we can be of service.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it. So thank you all once again. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and be sure to pass along this recorded video to anyone you think would benefit. Thank you very much, everyone. Goodbye.